Odin, weather control, and the Mercury Archetype. Odin, from the Old Norse, is a widely revered god in Germanic and Norse mythology. He was also known as Wodan, Woden, or Wotan, and it is from this name we get the name of Wednesday, meaning Woden's Day. Tacitus, the Roman historian and politician, equated Odin with the Roman god Mercury. And through the Latin languages, this mural is from a villa in Pompeii, we obtain the French Mercredi, Italian Mercoledì, and Spanish Miércoles, from the Latin Dies Mercurii, Day of Mercury. In astrology there is a planet called Mercury, with this symbol, a horned circle on a cross. The cross has the general symbolism found in our video, the symbolism of the cross and the mandala, and the horns have the symbolism found in our video, the symbolism of horns. In Greek, the equivalent god was Hermes. He was an Olympian deity and functioned as the emissary and messenger of the gods. He was said to be the son of Zeus, the chief Greek deity. Hermes Trismegistus, from the ancient Greek Hermes the thrice greatest, classical Latin Mercurius ter maximus, was a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Notice the horns and writing tablet. And Thoth was the god of sacred texts, mathematics, the sciences, and magic. He too was a messenger, master of knowledge, and patron of scribes. Hermes Trismegistus can also be found in both Islamic and Bahá'í writings. In those traditions, Hermes Trismegistus has been associated with the prophet Idris, and another name for Idris is Enoch, the biblical prophet. He was the first of Adam's children to be given prophecy, and the first to write with a pen. Archetype. And we could continue, because all these names simply hide the fact that this is one archetype. See our video Archetypes. And this archetype was a messenger, an emissary and messenger of the gods, communicator, the one who taught writing and the use of words and language, poetry and prose, rhetoric, dialectic, diplomacy, and persuasive speech. Music, the one who brought music and musical instruments. Magic, a magician and teacher of spells with the ability to influence the weather. A psychopomp, with the ability to escort newly deceased souls from Earth to the afterlife. See our video, Dying. A prophet, that is, with an ability to prophesy, also called a seer. A healer, which is why the caduceus is still used as a symbol in medicine. Here, Odin heals a horse. Odin, for example, was associated with runes, writing, spells, and music. He was also the god of poetry and literature. This archetype repeats throughout history, being gifted to people at crucial times and in crucial places in Earth's evolutionary history. In other words, there have been thousands of Christs, because Christ simply means the anointed one, or, if you prefer, someone chosen to be a messenger. And these chosen ones can be found worldwide. The names of the people who have received these gifts live on in myths, religious texts, and the Bible. Gods, for example Odin, Hermes, Thoth, Mercury, Horus, and even Merlin. Avatars? Avatar derives from a Sanskrit word meaning descent, and refers to the descent of a deity to the earth, typically the incarnation in earthly form of Vishnu, in other words, the same archetype. And prophets. Prophets are defined in Islam, for example, to be individuals who are messengers, those who transmit divine revelation. And Muslims believe that many prophets existed, including many not mentioned in the Quran. For example, Enoch, Noah, Eber and Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob and Joseph, Job, Ezekiel, Jethro and Moses, Aaron, David, Solomon and Jonah, Elijah, Elisha, Zechariah and John, Jesus and Muhammad. Avatars, gods and prophets are believed to have been sent to different communities during different periods in history. The Quran states there is a messenger for every community. In other words, there may be only one archetype, but there have been any number of actual people who displayed the gifts of this archetype. Literally thousands and thousands, all displaying one or more of these characteristics. Hence Jesus conforms to this archetype. He was a messenger, healer, able to affect the weather, could walk on water, levitate, had power over life and raising the dead. And he had powers of persuasion, providing wisdom in the form of simple parables. Jesus, Luke 8, calming the storm. Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, Let us go over unto the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. But as they sailed, he fell asleep. And there came down a storm of wind on the lake, and they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. And they came to him and awoke him, saying, Master, Master, we perish. And he arose, and rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. Despite there being thousands and thousands of this archetype, some became better known, usually after they had died, because they were more successful in their role as messenger and had more of these gifts. An agent of change. This archetype is connected with change and transformation. Thus it is associated with both construction and destruction, as the two have to go together. The old has to go for the new to appear. People are frightened of change. As such, this archetype has a somewhat ambivalent image in myths and legend. The falcon Horus, for example, has a ferocious beak and claws. See a video, The Symbolism of the Falcon Horus and the Story of Osiris. And Jung spoke on the spirit of Mercury in 1942 during the Second World War. The image of this archetype often has horns, indicating a receiver of messengers. And we have a video on the symbolism of horns. Sometimes the horns curve right round, and become like the twin snakes on the caduceus of Mercury. Our video on the symbolism of snakes, serpents, and snake charmers provides an explanation on the symbolism of snakes. Mercury and the Tarot. In the Tarot, the role of the messenger has been divided into further archetypes. This is the Tarot card for the Hanged Man, which incorporates the upturned symbol for Mercury. See the video on this Hanged Man, where his legs are used to make a cross. And this is the card for the Hermit. See our video on the symbolism of the Hermit in the Tarot. And this is the card for the Fool. See our video on the symbolism of the Fool. All these major or trump cards in the Tarot are simply recognizing that the one archetype of the messenger can appear in various guises depending on the role. The magician, for example, is a version of the archetype. So to summarize, this archetype, this messenger or agent of change, this prophet, avatar or god, becomes a major player in the play being enacted to create the change. And in order to effect the change, may take on a role. See our video, The Symbolism of the Theatre. Odin, for example, was clearly not a fool, but he shows many of the characteristics of a magician, and a magician can affect the weather. The archetype as seen in Odin, the Poetic Edda. I know spells. If I am in need, if I must protect my ship at sea, the wind I can lull upon the wave, and quieten all the sea to sleep. The archetype as seen in Odin, the Habermal. The poem Habermal, Old Norse Sayings of the High One, consists entirely of wisdom verse attributed to Odin. I know that I hung on a windy tree 9 long nights, wounded with a spear, dedicated to Odin, myself to myself. On that tree of which no man knows from where its roots run, no bread did they give me, nor a drink from a horn. Downwards I peered. I took up the runes, screaming I took them, then I fell back from there. Odin describes how he went into a trance to reach Yggdrasil, and did so under fasting conditions, in order to be given runes, which were the method by which spells were recorded. But this process was no picnic. Screaming, I took them. And we get from this another key component of this archetype: sacrifice and suffering. In order for Odin to become all-knowing and wise, he had to sacrifice things in order to gain wisdom. We cover the concept of sacrifice in our video, What Does Sacrifice Really Mean? Horus, the son of Osiris, loses an eye in his battle against Seth. See the symbolism of the falcon Horus and the story of Osiris. Odin too had only one eye, reflecting the same idea, but it implies Odin sacrificed a great deal in order to fulfill his destiny. The archetype as seen in Odin, the Ynglinga Saga. The Ynglinga Saga was originally written about 1225 in Old Norse. Its author, Snorri Sturluson, was an Icelandic poet and historian. The Ynglinga Saga is the first section of his Heimskringla. Snorri Sturluson based his work on an earlier Ynglinga tale, which is attributed to Norwegian 9th century Skald, and which also appears in Historia Norvegia. Snorri's work covers the history of the Norwegian kings from the mythical prehistoric age until 1177. It begins with the arrival of the Norse gods to Scandinavia. In effect, they have migrated from somewhere to get there, and Freya founds the Swedish Yngling dynasty at Uppsala. From the Ynglinga saga, or the story of the Yngling family, from Odin to Halfdan the Black, of Odin's accomplishments and feats. When Odin of Asaland came to the North, and the deer with him, they introduced and taught to others the arts which the people long afterwards have practiced. Odin was the cleverest of all, and from him all the others learned their arts and accomplishments, and he knew them first, and knew many more than other people. But now, to tell why he is held in such high respect, we must mention various causes that contributed to it. Shapeshift. When sitting among his friends, his countenance was so beautiful and dignified that the spirits of all were exhilarated by it. But when he was in war, he appeared dreadful to his foes. This arose from his being able to change his skin and form in any way he liked. Communication, rhetoric and poetry. Another cause was that he conversed so cleverly and smoothly that all who heard believed him. He spoke everything in rhyme, such as now composed, which we call skoldkraft. Music. He and his temple priests were called songsmiths, for from them came the art of song into the northern countries. Magic, spells and telepathy. Odin could make his enemies in battle blind or deaf or terror-struck, and their weapons so blunt that they could no more but than a willow wand. On the other hand, his men rushed forwards without armour, were as mad as dogs or wolves, bit their shields and were strong as bears or wild bulls, and killed people at a blow, but neither fire nor iron told upon themselves. These were called berserker. Remote viewing and out of body. Odin could transform his shape. His body would lie as if dead or asleep, but then he would be in shape of a fish or worm or bird or beast, and be off in a twinkling to distant lands upon his own or other people's business. Weather control and spells. With words alone, he could quench fire, still the ocean in tempest, and turn the wind to any quarter he pleased. A magic carpet. Odin had a ship which was called Sklidbladnir, in which he sailed over wide seas, and which he could roll up like a cloth, communicating with dead spirits. Odin carried with him Mime's head, which told him all the news of other countries. Sometimes he even called the dead out of the earth, or set himself beside the burial mounds, whence he was called the Ghost Sovereign and Lord of the Mounds, communicating with animals. He had 2 ravens, to whom he had taught the speech of man, and they flew far and wide throughout the land, and brought him the news. Spells and chants. In all such things he was preeminently wise. He taught all these arts in runes and songs which are called incantations, and therefore the Asalan people are called incantation smiths. Prophecy. Odin understood also the art in which the greatest power is lodged, and which he himself practiced, namely what is called magic. By means of this He could know beforehand the predestined fate of men, or their not yet completed lot, and also bring on the death, ill luck, or bad health of people, and take the strength or wit from one person and give it to another. But after such witchcraft followed such weakness and anxiety, that it was not thought respectable for men to practice it, and therefore the priestesses were brought up in this art. Communication with terrestrial beings. Odin understood the songs by which the earth, the hills, the stones and mounds were opened to him, and he bound those who dwell in them by the power of his word, and went in and took what he pleased. From these arts he became very celebrated. Last thoughts. Euhemerism is an approach to the interpretation of mythology in which mythological accounts are presumed to have originated from real historical events or personages. It supposes that historical accounts become myths as they are exaggerated in the retelling. Jagddampar Odin, or The Search for Odin, was the project title of Thor Heyerdahl's last series of archaeological excavations, which took place in Azov, Tane, in Russia. Heyerdahl's intention was to prove the veracity of the account of Snorri Sturluson in the Ynglinga saga, and Snorri provides an humoristic account. He describes Odin and the Aesir as having been real people who emigrated north, then west, from the area around the River Don to Germany and Scandinavia. However, he also says that Odin was said to have interests beyond the Caucasus mountain, and beyond the Caucasus lies Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site in southeastern Anatolia, Turkey, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is older than the pyramids, or Stonehenge, or the temples of Malta, Newgrange in Ireland, or the Orkney megalithic structures. The site also has the world's oldest known megaliths, and it is laid out as a site for the mysteries. As such, Odin may have been one of the very, very early adepts of the mysteries, at a time when they were being revived after the Ice Age.